Alright, today we're going to talk about controversial missions in video games. But the twist is that as the video progresses, the missions we will talk about will get more bizarre too. So it's kind of a gauntlet-type video. Well, let's start with something light. We're talking GTA 5. I'm sure you guys have played this mission, but still, let me brief you. The GTA 5 torture mission, also known as By the Book, is pretty controversial. Because the player, as Trevor Phillips, the badass guy, has to torture a man named Ferdinand Karamov to extract information for the FIB. The player can choose from 4 different torture methods: waterboarding, electric shocks, tooth extraction, and wrench beating. The mission is meant to be a satire of the US government's use of torture and the ineffectiveness of such methods, as well as a commentary on Trevor's psychopathic personality. But you know, people don't take things lightly, especially on the internet. Many found the mission to be disturbing, unnecessary, and offensive, as it forced them to participate in graphic and realistic violence against a helpless victim. According to them, it glamorizes torture and makes it seem like a game rather than a serious human rights violation. It desensitizes the player to the suffering of others and reduces empathy. It contradicts the game's own narrative, as the torture does not yield any useful information and the target is just a random person. But again, I would like to say that it's just a game. Weird, but true. The GTA 5 torture mission is one of the most controversial moments in the history of the GTA franchise and Rockstar games, but it's still cute compared to later entries. The next one is the Oblivion Assassination Mission. Oblivion Mission. Whodunit is a quest in the Elder Scrolls IV, Oblivion. In this quest you are hired by the Dark Brotherhood, a guild of assassins, to kill all the guests at a house party without being detected. The player can use various methods to manipulate, isolate, and eliminate the targets while pretending to be one of the invited guests. This quest is considered sadistic, but a masterpiece of a mission by many fans and critics of the game. Basically, guilty pleasures. This mission allows the player to exercise their creativity and freedom in how they approach the task, as there are multiple ways to kill the guests, such as using stealth, persuasion, deception, poison, or brute force. It provides dark and twisted humor, as the player can enjoy the irony and absurdity of the situation. This mission didn't generate any big controversy because you are playing Elder Scrolls after all. But there's actually a 200 IQ move you can make to pass this mission without any killing. Now let me take you to the world of God of War. I mean, if your protagonist is a psychopath killer, there will be some WTF moments. In God of War 3, there's a mission involving the Poseidon Princess. The mission required you to use the princess as a counterweight to open a door, and then leave her to be crushed by the mechanism. The princess begged for mercy and tried to escape, but Kratos ignored her and proceeded with his quest. On top of that, Sony included an achievement trophy for this segment. Wild, if you ask me. There were mixed reactions. Mostly some argued that it was consistent with Kratos' character and the game's theme of revenge, but others felt that it crossed a line and served no narrative purpose. The mission sparked a debate about the depiction of violence in women in video games and whether such scenes are justified or harmful. But still, this mission didn't cause any rule changes, but this next one did. The Night Trap Bathroom Mission. This game had a mission that involved a scene where a woman was attacked and killed in a shower. The scene was considered violent, sexualized, and degrading to women by some critics and politicians who claimed that the game encouraged the player to harm the woman. Remember, this was still the early 90s. And people were still adapting to pixelated video games. The mission was one of the main targets of a 1993 Senate committee hearing on video game violence led by Senators Joe Lieberman and Herb Kohl. They argued that games like Night Trap and Mortal Kombat were harmful to children and society, and called for a video game rating system to regulate their content. There was a ton of public debate about the effects of video games on morality and culture, which led to the creation of the Entertainment Software Rating Board, ESRB, in 1994. The ESRB is a self-regulatory organization that assigns age and content ratings to video games. But, to be honest, nobody cares much about it. Speaking from personal experience, I know you were waiting for this. It's not Russian time. The Call of Duty: Modern Warfare 2. No Russian mission is one of the most controversial and memorable missions in the history of video games. So the mission begins with a cutscene showing Joseph Allen, an undercover CIA agent, meeting with Vladimir Makarov, a Russian ultranationalist terrorist leader, and his associates in an elevator. Makarov hands Allen a gun and says, "Remember, no Russian." implying that they should not speak Russian during the attack. By the way, a lot of people still don't understand what no Russian actually why means. The elevator doors open, and the group walks out into the Zakhaev International Airport in Moscow, where they open fire on the civilians and security personnel. Come on, I know you have seen all of this. The player can choose to participate in the massacre or just follow Makarov, but either way, they cannot prevent the attack or save anyone. Just observe. The mission lasts for about 10 minutes, during which the group makes their way through the airport terminal, the security checkpoint, and the tarmac, killing hundreds of people along the way. The mission ends when the group reaches an ambulance, and Makarov shoots Alan in the head. Makarov then leaves Alan's body behind, hoping that the Russians will find it and blame the Americans for the attack. The mission was designed by Mohammad Alavi, who wanted to create a catalyst for the game's plot and an emotional connection between the player and Makarov. He also wanted to explore the theme of war and its consequences, as well as how the player's actions can affect the world. Alavi said that he did not intend to make the mission controversial, but rather memorable and impactful. But you know, not everyone can be on the same page. Basically, the mission sparked a lot of controversy and criticism for its graphic and disturbing depiction of violence and terrorism. News channels milked the hell out of it. Some critics and politicians argued that the mission was illogical, insensitive, and harmful, and that it encouraged the player to harm innocent people. Some also compared the mission to the 9/11 attacks and other real-life terrorist incidents. Now enter the video game journalists. If you ask me, this game kind of kicked off their career. The mission also generated a lot of debate and discussion among gamers and journalists, who had different opinions and perspectives on the mission. Some praised the mission for its boldness, realism, and storytelling, and argued that it was a powerful and meaningful experience that challenged the player's morality and emotions. Some also defended the mission as a form of artistic expression and freedom, and argued that it was not meant to glorify or justify violence, but rather to criticize and condemn it. The mission was censored or removed in some international versions of the game, such as the Russian, Japanese, and German versions, due to the level's graphic content and the local laws and regulations. The mission was also optional and skippable in other versions of the game, and the player was warned before playing the mission that they could skip it if they found it disturbing or offensive. But Activision doesn't give a shit. The mission was remastered and re-released in 2020 as part of the Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 campaign remastered, which featured improved graphics and sound. The mission was unchanged and uncut in the remastered version, except for the removal of the option to skip the mission. By the way, Modern Warfare 2 is amazing. You should play it if you haven't. Now for South Park. I know what you must be thinking. South Park is a TV show. Well, they have a game too, or I should say a good amount of games, but the most significant and well-made is Stick of Truth. Now, wherever South Park goes, controversy follows. One of the controversial aspects of the game is the inclusion of scenes that involve alien probes and abortions. These scenes are part of the game's story and gameplay, and they are meant to be humorous and absurd. But they are kind of insane. The alien probe scenes occur on the first night of the game, when the main character is abducted by aliens and subjected to blah blah probing by a device that resembles, well, I'm not going to use that word. The player has to escape from the alien ship by using the probe as a teleportation device, and also encounters other characters who have been probed, such as Randy Marsh and Mr. Slave. And the abortion scenes occur on the second night of the game, when the new kid has to infiltrate an abortion clinic disguised as a girl. The player has to perform an abortion on Randy, who is pretending to be pregnant, and also avoid being detected by Nazi zombies who are looking for a fetus with special powers. Yep, that might give you a stroke, but hey, it's South Park. They thrive on weirdness. These scenes have been censored in different ways in different regions and platforms. In Europe, Australia, and Russia, the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 versions of the game have replaced these scenes with images of a crying koala and a statue of Michelangelo's David, respectively, along with text descriptions of what is happening, written by Stone and Parker. The PC version of the game is uncensored in most of Europe, except for Germany, where the Nazi imagery is also censored. In Australia, the game is censored on all platforms, and the abortion scenes are replaced with images of a kangaroo, a platypus, and a dolphin. In North America, the game is uncensored on all platforms. Australia is ruthless when it comes to this. If you have seen my GTA controversy video, you know what I am talking about. Some have argued that the censorship is unnecessary, hypocritical, or inconsistent, given that the game has an 18+ rating, and that the TV show has depicted similar or worse content without censorship. Others have defended the censorship as a market decision, a legal requirement, or a respect for cultural sensitivity. Stone and Parker, the creators, were frustrated and pissed. They have said that the censorship does not ruin the game, but rather adds to its absurdity and satire. They have also said that they were not willing to change the content of the game, but rather to make a joke out of the fact that they had to cut it. Classic South Park attitude. Next, the White Phosphorus mission in Spec Ops, The Line. So this mission involves the use of a chemical weapon that causes severe burns and death to enemies and civilians. The mission is part of the game's narrative and gameplay, and it is meant to challenge the player's moral and psychological boundaries. The mission is widely regarded as one of the most disturbing and controversial scenes in video game history. So the mission occurs in the 9th chapter of the game, titled The Road. The game is set in post-apocalyptic Dubai, where a rogue U.S. Army battalion led by Colonel John Conrad has imposed a brutal martial law over the surviving population. The player, which is you, controls Captain Martin Walker, who leads a Delta Force team to find and rescue Conrad and his men. Along the way, Walker and his team encounter various horrors and atrocities committed by both sides of the conflict, and they gradually lose their sanity and morality. The mission begins with Walker and his team finding a cache of white phosphorus shells, a type of incendiary munition that ignites on contact with air and burns anything it touches. Walker decides to use the shells to clear out a large enemy camp at the gate of Conrad's headquarters, despite the objections of his squadmate Lugo, who warns him of the possible civilian casualties. Walker says that they have no choice, and he proceeds to launch a drone that allows him to target and fire the shells from a safe distance. The player then takes control of the drone's camera, which shows the enemies as white silhouettes on a black and white screen. The player has to aim and fire the shells at the enemy positions while avoiding friendly fire and collateral damage. The game does not explicitly tell the player that there are civilians in the camp, but there are some hints, such as the presence of tents, vehicles, and a large white blob in the center of the camp. The player can choose to ignore or target these elements, but the game does not give any feedback or consequences for the player's actions at this point. See, you know where this is going. The mission continues with Walker and his team walking through the aftermath of the white phosphorus attack. The game switches to a third-person perspective and shows the horrific scenes of the burned and mutilated bodies of enemies and civilians. The game forces you to witness the suffering and agony of the victims, some of whom are still alive and begging for mercy or death. The game also plays audio logs of the enemies and civilians before the attack, revealing their personalities, motivations, and emotions. The game does not allow the player to skip or avoid these scenes, but rather makes them confront the consequences of their actions. I mean, this was kind of what you expect from an amateur sadist film. The mission reaches its climax when Walker and his team discover that the large white blob in the center of the camp was actually a group of civilians that Conrad and his men were trying to protect and evacuate. The game shows the charred corpses of men, women, and children, including a mother and a child embracing each other in death. The game also plays a radio message from Conrad, who reveals that he knew about Walker's plan and deliberately lured him into killing the civilians as part of his twisted psychological game. Walker and his team are shocked and enraged by this revelation, and they blame Conrad and the enemies for forcing them to use the white phosphorus. Walker says that they have to keep moving and find Conrad, and the mission ends. People lost their minds after seeing this mission, saying that the mission is unnecessary, manipulative, or insensitive, given that the game does not give the player any choice or agency in the matter, and that the game does not explore the ethical or political implications of the use of white phosphorus. But most importantly, the game's developers have stated that the mission was intended to be a turning point in the game's story and gameplay, and that they wanted to create a memorable and emotional experience for the player. This is what everyone says when they get hate. Oh no, that wasn't my point, bro. Let's go deeper. And I want to give you all a minor warning because this one is actually pretty insane and crazy to me. The Hive section in Duke Nukem Forever involves the exploration of an alien structure where women are being impregnated by the aliens. The segment is part of the game's story and gameplay, and it is meant to be shocking and grotesque. Yup, it's bizarre and crazy, considering how shitty the game was. It was unnecessary. The segment occurs in the 8th chapter of the game, titled The Hive. The game is a sequel to the 1996 game Duke Nukem 3D. The game follows the protagonist, Duke Nukem, a macho and arrogant hero who fights against an alien invasion. If you haven't played this series, I'm sure you have seen him in memes at least. In this chapter, Duke enters the Hive, located beneath the Duke Dome, to rescue the Wholesome Twins, two blonde women who are Duke's fans and lovers. The Hive is a dark and organic environment filled with alien creatures and structures. The player has to navigate through the Hive using Duke's vision, a device that allows him to see in the dark. The player also has to interact with various organic objects, such as lights, doors, bug balls, bouncing pads, and gas bubbles. The enemies in the Hive are mostly octobrains, pregnators, and octobobbies, which are alien creatures that can attack Duke with psychic powers, acid spit, or melee attacks. The player has to use weapons such as the shotgun, the Ripper, or the pipe bomb to fight them. But the most controversial aspect of the segment is the portrayal of the captive women, who are being held in cocoons and impregnated by the aliens. The women are shown in various stages of pregnancy, some of them with visible alien fetuses inside their bellies. The women are also shown in pain and distress, some of them begging Duke to kill them or the aliens. The player can choose to ignore, kill, or interact with the women, but the game does not give any moral or gameplay consequences for the player's actions. The game also plays audio logs of the women before the abduction, revealing their personalities, backgrounds, and relationships with Duke. The segment reaches its climax when Duke finds the Wholesome Twins, who have been captured and impregnated by the aliens. The twins tell Duke that they love him and that they are sorry for what happened. Duke responds by saying, "It looks like you're fucked." The twins then give birth to baby octobrains, exploding violently in the process. Duke vows revenge on the alien queen, who is the boss of the next chapter. I mean, that dialogue was simply wild. Like, who thought that we should totally do this? The game's developers have stated that the segment was intended to be a shocking and memorable experience for the player, and that they wanted to create a game that was true to the spirit and humor of Duke Nukem. But people totally hated it because it was too bizarre, insane, and pointless. You are not going to expect this, but we actually have a Mario mission here. Just wow. Paddle Battle is a mini-game in the first Mario Party game, released in 1998 for the Nintendo 64. The minigame involves 4 players paddling a boat in opposite directions by rotating the analog stick as fast as possible. The player who is alone has to paddle against the other 3 players, who are on the same team. The minigame is a coin-collecting game, where the player who paddles faster can move the boat towards the side of the river, where piranha plants are waiting to bite the other players and take their coins. Basically a fun, cool minigame, but not actually. The controversy surrounding this minigame stems from the fact that many players, especially children, used their palms instead of their thumbs to rotate the analog stick, resulting in blisters, cuts, and injuries. The game did not warn the players about the potential harm of using their palms, nor did it provide any alternative control scheme. The game also did not limit the number of times the minigame could appear in a single session, increasing the risk of injury. I mean, there's no way Miyamoto thought about this. The controversy led to a class-action lawsuit against Nintendo of America, filed by a New York law firm in 1999. The lawsuit claimed that Nintendo was negligent and liable for the injuries caused by the minigame and demanded compensation for the medical expenses and damages. Nintendo settled the lawsuit by agreeing to provide protective gloves to the players who requested them, as well as issuing a warning on the game's packaging and instruction manual. Nintendo also removed or modified the minigame and other similar ones in the subsequent Mario Party games. Nintendo really is quick with all of this. Now for the most controversial mission. At least this video is again related to GTA, the hot coffee. I already talked about this in my GTA controversy video, but I, being a good boy, will explain it again briefly. So all of this drama started in 2005, when a modder named Patrick Wildenborg discovered and unlocked a hidden minigame in the game that allowed you to do naughty stuff. The minigame, dubbed Hot Coffee after the euphemism used by the girlfriends to invite the player to their houses, was originally intended to be part of the game but was disabled by the developers before the release to battle ESRB ratings. But the code and assets for the minigame were still present in the game files, and Wildenborg was able to access them by using a software tool called Action Replay. Maybe Rockstar forgot to remove it, or it was a pre-planned controversy. We will never know. He then released the mod online, which quickly spread among the gaming community and the media. The revelation of the hot coffee mod caused a huge uproar among the public, the press, and the US government, which accused the game's developer, Rockstar Games, and its publisher, Take-Two Interactive, of deceiving consumers and the rating board, the Entertainment Software Rating Board, ESRB, by hiding the sexual content in the game. The ESRB, which had originally rated the game as mature M for ages 17 and up, launched an investigation into the matter and found that Rockstar had indeed lied about the existence of the minigame and had failed to disclose it during the rating process. As a result, the ESRB changed the rating of the game to Adults Only, AO, for ages 18 and up, which effectively banned the game from being sold at most major retailers in the US and Canada, which have policies against stocking AO-rated games. The ESRB also fined Rockstar and Take-Two for violating its rules and ordered them to recall and re-release the game with the hot coffee content removed. But there's more. Then Senator Hillary Clinton, who introduced a bill called the Family Entertainment Protection Act, which aimed to impose federal penalties on retailers who sell violent or sexually explicit video games to minors, and to create an independent oversight committee to monitor the ESRB. The bill, however, did not pass Congress, because Rockstar Games lawyers are simply built differently. The scandal also sparked a shitton of lawsuits against Rockstar and Take-Two, both from consumers and investors, who claimed that they were misled, defrauded, or harmed by the hot coffee mod. Kinda overreactium. One of the most notable cases was a class-action lawsuit filed by an 85-year-old grandmother, Florence Cohen, who bought the game for her 14-year-old grandson, unaware of its content. The controversy also influenced the development and design of the subsequent Grand Theft Auto games, which toned down or avoided the inclusion of explicit sexual content. Just kidding. They are still insane. Wait for GTA 6 to see what I am talking about. I think we should end the video here. Started with GTA and ended with GTA. Poetic. Now I have a crazy question for you. Which of the following missions do you believe was really over the line and kind of crazy? Comment that down. I really want to see that. For me personally, Duke Nukem was bizarre as hell. If you enjoyed the video, consider liking it and subscribing to the channel. Not because we are close to any crazy milestone, but because it's kinda cool. Yeah, that's it. I'll see you in the next video. Till then, take care and have a nice day.